Hey everyone, welcome back to the Barry Sax Masterclass. My name is Sal, and today we're going to be focusing on scales. So in particular, I want to go over the F concert scale, which is our D major scale, if we're in the key of E flat. So, our F concert scale. We could do two full octaves of our D major scale. And we start on low D, we go to high D with the palm key. So I want everybody to try that out just on their own, nice and easy. And the trick to doing this, if we're doing two octave, is to get an even sound all the way from the bottom octave all the way to the top. So when we play the high D, we want to have it sound nice and resonant, just as we play the low D. And the trick to that is controlling our air support. So coming from here all the way down, take a good breath and blow a nice consistent stream of air all the way up to the top. And then back down from high D. And making sure every octave is nice and resonant all the way through there. Alright? So, we have our D major scale, and the relative minor for D major is B minor. So, if anyone could figure out how we get to B minor from D major, there's a few ways to figure that out. The first one is to take our major scale, our D major scale, and go down 3 half steps. So if we go down 3 half steps from D, we end up on B. Now we use the D major scale, which has F sharp and C sharp, and we just apply that to when we start on B. So again, we start on B, and we're going to go from B to B, either 1 or 2 octaves, and we're going to use F sharp and C sharp, just like we're playing our D major scale. So, to put it into context, this is what D major scale sounds like starting on D. Go down 3 half steps. Starting on B, now let's do our B minor scale. So, we start on B, and we go up 1 octave to B, and then we can go another octave up to high B, and then come back down. So that's the first way we could figure out how relative major and minors work. So if you have a relative minor, so let's say we have B minor, and we want to figure out the relative major, well, we just go back the other way. So we have B minor, and 3 half steps up is going to be D. So the relative major to B minor is D. And you could use the same concept with key signatures as you would going backwards. So if you were to say, well, I know that B minor has 2 sharps, it's F sharp and C sharp, we can use that to figure out what the relative major is. So again, if B natural minor has F sharp and C sharp and it starts on B, we can use that, go up 3 half steps, and you have your major scale. we have another way of figuring out which minor scale goes to which major scale, and that way is going from the circle of fifths. So if everybody knows the circle of fifths, we start on C, and we go from C, and we add a sharp, 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 until we get to 5 to 7 sharps, and then going the other way, we add flats. So we start on C, and going backwards, we go C, and we go to F, we go to B flat, and so on and so forth, adding flats all the way until we get to 7 flats or 5 flats when we switch. So there's 3 keys in the bottom of the circle of fifths that you can either do sharp or flat. So when we say that we could do either G flat, we could do our G flat scale, and that's going this way around the circle, around flats, we get to G flat, or we could say we got to F sharp, and that's going to be the same thing. So if we go around, and we're starting on C, so C, the first sharp that we add is our G major scale, that's 1 sharp. The second sharp that we add is our D major scale, right? So D major scale, 2 sharps. If we do that for our minor scale, we start on C. Now, if we start on C, we have 3 flats for a C minor scale, right? So we're actually starting over here on 3 flats. Now we need to make it back all the way until we get to 2 sharps. So if we start with C, we go all the way through our circle of fifths. So we go C, which is 3 flats, and then we get to, eventually, we get to B. So B has 2 sharps. And that's how we could figure out where B minor lines up with D major for us. Now, a tricky thing to remember is that when I'm talking about our D major scale, that's not the same as concert. When we say concert pitch, that means in the key of C. So usually you'll see the circle of fifths in the key of C. It starts with concert C, and that's the first one they go to. So concert C, and then their concert G, concert D, and so on and so forth. So when we say concert F, you have to remember that you're starting over here with 1 flat. Right, so we're starting with 1 flat with concert F, and you have to add, for the key of E flat, you have to add how many flats? Or how many sharps? We have to add 1, 2, 3 sharps, right? We have to add, go from F, which is 1 flat, add 1 sharp, which gets you to C major, add another sharp, which gets you to G, and then add the 3rd sharp, and we get to D. So once we feel comfortable with our D major scale, or our concert F, and our relative minor of B, we can start to do different rhythms and articulations with that. So the first thing that I want to work on is when we do our scale, let's start and put our metronome on 60 beats per minute. So that'll be the 8th note pulse. Each time you practice that, I want everyone to go up 10 clicks on the metronome. So you go from 60 beats per minute at the 8th note and go to 70, and so on and so forth until you get to 120. When you get to 120, 120 is double 60, which means that you're basically going at the 16th note at this point. So go faster, you go to the 16th note. At this point, we could go back to 60 and play the 16th note and see how fast we can get. So starting 16th note equals 120, and keep on going up by about 5 or 10, and you'll see that it's a little bit difficult to go there. You could try 2 octaves if you want. And the most important thing is to keep everything consistent all the way through. So we don't want to have everything needs to stay consistent so that there's no kind of blips when we go in between octaves or on the palm key D. We have that. That seems to give people the most trouble on the second octave. You could practice that back and forth just a little bit, just doing that with the metronome. That helps to make everything really smooth and consistent there. So next thing we can do, still using the metronome, is put different rhythms to it. So, and this kind of goes along with articulation. We can add triplets instead of eighth notes. So instead of going triplets, we could do triplets, and we could switch up the rhythm. So we could do triplets, eighth notes, or 16th note like swing feels. So when we do our 16th note swing feel, we do our dotted eighth note and then our 16th note. So for that, we'll start. So that's a cool little thing we could practice. Then once we do that and we feel really comfortable, we can switch the two. So what I want to do is take the D ba da dee da da dum, where we have dotted 8th 16th, switch it to where we have 16th and then dotted 8th. So that sounds like dee da dee da dee da da. When we play the scale, it'll sound like this. This is a little bit more unnatural, so it's a little bit more advanced. But that's great if we can go back and forth between D ba da 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 and then dee da dee da dee da da. The next thing we can do is do triplets and eighths at the same time. So before we had right, those are our eighth notes, and we have our triplets. We could do triplet, eighth, eighth, triplet, eighth, eighth, triplet, eighth, eighth. Now that's even more advanced if you could do that. And doing this all with the metronome really helps you to stay in time and feel a different pulse than you're used to, especially when we're doing the triplets and the eighth notes. It really helps you to advance your skills with rhythms and getting very comfortable technically on the saxophone, especially for Barry, because it's such a wide range with your fingers going up and down the scales. It's not as easy as alto, where you just both hands are right here and you're just going up and down really fast. So the last thing we can talk about for today is articulations when we do our scales. So I'm going to start with our B minor scale right now. And we could do different articulations. So just like how we did our rhythms, we can start slower and go up the scale and do different articulations. Now, we're not going to get quite as fast as 120 for our 16th notes when we do our articulations, but we can definitely work up to that, maybe 5 or 10 clicks at a time. So when we do our articulations, we want to start with a nice deep dark tone when we start, especially in the bottom octave. So let's just say we're doing B minor. We want to have all the notes that we play nice and even. So let's go up the scale in eighth notes, and let's just do it like this. So do that a few times up and down the scale, and you'll feel that the eighth notes are starting to lock in a little bit better, and then on some of them you might lose track. So keep in mind while you're playing, be mentally engaged of the points where you're staying really consistent and thinking about it, and the points where it's getting away from you a little bit from the metronome. So when we do these scales, we want to tongue the exact same way that we're doing all of our notes, but we're changing our embouchure just so slightly from the different octaves. So doing these jumps that I just did also helps you. So first we're going to start with our scale. Do those articulations, and then try jumps. If you know your arpeggios, so let's just say to the D major scale, that'll really help get all of your octaves consistent with each other so that they sound really rich and full with a good tone. Just like that. So we could practice all these things together, and like we were doing with the rhythms, we can articulate just like how we were doing with the rhythms. Nice and slow at first, and just slowly start to speed up. So what I want to do is to do triplet, eighth note, triplet, eighth note, triplet, eighth note, all the way up the B minor scale, and articulating it too. Something like that. These exercises are really flexible in the way that you can change it up however you want. You can do the 16th note, 8th note thing, or the swing thing, D ba da ba da ba dum, doing articulations like that. Any of these warm-ups will really help you both with articulation, getting faster at that, getting more consistent, and technical with your playing. So to wrap up, we have a few different ways of finding relative major and minors, and the first one is to go from the major key that we have. So let's just say we are in F concert, and which is our D, right? Our D major scale. We take that scale, we go down 3 half steps to B. Now we use the key signature in our D major scale, and we just start on B. So we start on B, and we use F sharp and C sharp to get our B minor, B natural minor scale. That's the first way. The second way is to go from the circle of fifths. So if we are looking at our circle of fifths and we are always starting on C. C is always at the top, and let's just say it's in concert pitch. So F will be over here with 1 flat. Now in the key of E flat, which is what our saxophones are in, we have to add 3 sharps to get our actual note. Right? So we go from F, and we go 1 sharp goes to C, 2 sharps goes to G, 3 sharps goes to D. We're in the key of D major. We do the same thing, the same process for our B minor scale. So we do the same thing where we go up and from C minor, and we find that our B minor scale has 2 sharps. Okay? Now, the next thing that we talked about is articulations. We talked about rhythms, and we talked about how to improve our scales. And one of the best ways, regardless of what you choose to do, is to use a metronome. Right? So keep that metronome clicking, either the 8th note pulse, you could do a triplet pulse, you know, triplet, 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 or you could do the 8th note pulse again and do a swing rhythm, where we do or like I said before, we can switch it and do dee-da, 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 dum. You can do a mix of those things, and you could really get creative with whatever warm-up you want to do with that. Alright, so that's our lesson today on the F concert scale, our D major, and the relative minor of B. See you guys next time.